Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Mother, directed by Bong Joon-ho, 10 Cloverfield Lane by Dan Trachtenberg, newly released Resurrection by Andrew Siemens, Samaritan by Julius Avery, and finally, 3,000 Years of Longing, directed by George Miller. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Tommy boy, how's it going?
I've got my levels all wrong here. I'm doing well. I'm doing really well over here. How was your week of movies?
Good. Week was, I don't know, I was maybe expecting a little bit more heavy hitters, but hey, you know. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. I was going back to Bong Joon-ho as a director. Obviously, George Miller coming back after Mad Max Fury Road. You know
definitely.
what I mean? So, but as always, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, excited to talk about all of these films. You know, even the low points, if you will. So.
Definitely. And there's some in here that kind of surprised me. There's some I'm excited to hear about. And I think we'll get started there. Let's go back to, I got confused when he first told me you did Mother. I was thinking what is her face? With the...
completely wrong.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes.
And Javier, right?
Yep, and that's Mother with an exclamation point.
With an exclamation point. This is Mother, no exclamation point.
Yep.
This came out in 2009. It's Mother. And directed by Bong Joon-ho, who we have a very good...
good track record with.
Very good track record.
Yeah. Excited because, we're back again with this director. We are 2 movies away from having every one of his movies on the ratings, which is exciting for me. I mean, if there's anything to the database element of the website, I would love to just cover directors from a bird's eye. You know what I mean?
And what was the earliest that we've covered was 2003. Like, what's his span of movie making?
I think we actually have to move earlier to cover the remaining films in his filmography. The earliest was definitely Memories of a Murder. And then following that was Parasite. No, what am I saying? The Host is after that.
I thought The Host was before the murder one.
I'm pretty sure it was Memories of Murder was before.
But even
all
going
around
back,
that time,
2000s. I believe it was 2003.
Yeah.
And going all the way back, you said that there were elements through and through. You could see how he grew.
Absolutely.
And there's things in Parasite that are great, that are still great in his earlier films.
Yeah, you read my mind because honestly, looking at this director's trademark of stories around family, that maybe seems a little loose, but it really is. It's in every one of his films, and this being titled Mother is the same. Unfortunately, I think this is one of his weakest.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's if there was anything I was disappointed with this week, it was expecting to really walk away with a lot more appreciation for him through yet another film that I haven't seen. This film, though, it's just it's lacking some electricity that I think even the earliest of his films that we've covered have.
Okay, so where are we set here?
Sure.
How does this movie get set up first?
So this is basically going to be family once again, but this time we are through the eyes of a coddling, overprotective mother. That is, of course, where the title comes from. I have to say this film, like I said a second ago, lacks some electricity, but it really does stay true to the theme or his hallmark of being about family and being in a perspective of, families stick together through the hardship. The initial setup of this is almost like a To Kill a Mockingbird. The son, the only son to the mother, is falsely accused of the death of a young girl, and the facts seem stacked against him. He most definitely has some sort of mental disability.
Okay.
He is very peculiar in how he acts, and worse yet, in him being accused of this murder, he really doesn't take the gravity of the situation seriously. So when he is in, interrogations, when he's in the holding cell, he's making jokes of this and making light of it, not understanding it. It is making a worse case for him. I think there is a serious gravity to, he's digging his own ditch, and his mother obviously wants to save him from that, and that's kind of the setup to it.
Okay.
As far as performances here, the mother, I think, is the standout. Haija Kim is the actress's name, and we follow her trying to prove her son's innocence, but she doesn't have it all together either. She, we kind of see a obsession form in her trying to prove her son's innocence, and that becomes kind of a spiral down. I think in her performance, it was actually very sweet. You'd really tell she's empathizing or she's able to conjure these feelings of the huge love any mother would have for their son.
Yeah, that protective motherhood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think in that, we kind of see two sides of the story. We see the son in prison, making light of the situation and again really digging his own grave. He's making the situation actively worse for himself in this accusation. And we see some of those peculiar ways of acting in a hereditary way. We see the mother not maybe having those same reactions, but acting very peculiar as well, and not all together there.
Was it all purposeful, or were you watching this being taken out of it, like thinking like this wouldn't be happening, or what is this kind of deal?
It's not that it's unrealistic. It's just not really enjoyable. It's
okay, all right.
especially around the son making things worse for himself. Being held.
That's where I want to get to. When you're watching this, does he feel like a real person who actually has difficulties?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't call him like a nerd or something like that, but he's just taking everything very lightly.
Sure.
And again, if I could maybe give a structure to this is a To Kill a Mockingbird kind of setup that clearly he's not what they should be pointing to,
Sure.
but the spin that this film and the plot gives is that he's almost painting himself as, someone to look to for this crime.
Right. So it's just that it's the uncomfortableness of it, or it's just, and for those reasons that it's not actually fun watching or a good experience.
It's
watching.
frustrating.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like, I'm rooting for the mom,
Right.
but it's just like, I don't know. But I do want to give credit to Haija Kim as a performance, because I think there was a way that she could have played this. I think it goes to a very good level in her performance to muster these kind of motherly type of tendencies, and then it's taken even a step further to kind of build in these hereditary little soft notes to her performance that show obviously these kind of mental quirks come from somewhere.
Right.
And I think that was an interesting development.
Yeah, I like that that's commitment. I like that that's thought about.
Exactly.
Probably, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have we seen her before in his other films, by the way?
I don't think so.
Okay, because he does like to use
repeat.
some of the same people. Yeah.
Yeah, and surprisingly, we didn't see kind of the usual offenders of who he kind of leans on as a cast, even with this being 2009, kind of mid stride into his film career. So I think the premise itself, it sounds strong as any other of Bong's films, but this one is a lot slower and just simply not better for it. It takes a while for this film to get up to pace, and scenes leading up to it dedicated to the film or dedicated to the son painting a target for himself are just frustrating to watch. It's an extremely odd movie, though. Much how we saw the humor was a little bit of a hard match for some of the grim reality in Memories of a Murder.
Yeah.
This has a similar quality, that we're handling some of the most dire circumstances, and humor tying to that is, I don't know, it's a bit of an awkward pill to swallow, where you even look at something like Host. Yeah, it's a creature monster movie, but there's a goofiness to it that lends well.
You love that.
Yeah.
Well, what we've appreciated him in the past, and talking about him, and even off podcast, was his ability to kind of have that make that dance, and doing it sometimes better than anyone else, because it's so tricky to deal with these topics and then throw in comedy. So far, he has worked it out pretty well.
Yeah,
and even in Memories of a Murder,
yeah, absolutely,
it worked
because
for the
there's
most
some
part.
heart among the family of the police force. That's basically the family in Memories of a Murder.
So could it have been executed slightly different and have it work? Or was it just completely off? No humor.
It works
no humor
eventually. Yeah, it is a little bit no humor here. Just because, I don't know, in a slight way, it feels a little tiny bit punching down on the mental disability aspect for like comedic laughs in 2009. Even that aside, the film just takes a while to give us a significant hook that makes us want to watch more. And by that time, there's only like 30 minutes left. I think where I come away with kind of a disappointing watch with this is it's a very good-looking film. It has all the filmmaking qualities that I've come to love his movies for, but it's just, sadly, I don't think it's worth the 2 hours, stretch.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 9 minutes.
Exactly.
And it has to be a bit of a slow film, just what we're dealing with here.
Exactly. And obviously that does add to the punch at the end, because we are building with this mother's obsession in trying to save her son, and that does take time to build throughout the film. But honestly, if we could just cut like a good solid 20 off of this, a lot of my problems would go away. And it's just that pacing is just not there for me. So I think maybe this would be a good watch if you are similar to me, looking to chip away at the filmography of a director. Bong is definitely not going anywhere. We haven't had a new project announced with him, but this is very much in line with his main releases. So I think that's where this could get a soft recommendation for me, that it's about studying his developments as a director, because there really is, again, his trademark is hit. It's about family. Yeah. It's about family. But beyond that, I think for the average watcher, this definitely is not going to be a solid recommend, and if anything, a pretty forceful pass on what I would say. Should you actually spend your time with this movie? No, I say this is spend your time elsewhere with some of his other wonderful films.
Yeah. Yep.
We're gonna go ahead and give Mother a 39.
Ooh, okay.
The old Kane Mutiny.
Yeah, is that right? Oh, I forgot who it actually gave Kane Mutiny.
Yeah. That's burned.
Yeah, 39. That's a low score.
Yeah.
That's really, and I understand, like you said, if you really just want to go through the filmography of this director, go for it. But otherwise, even if you're a huge fan of him, I still think something like this, then if it's that low, it's probably a safe bet where you can really skip it. He's a great director for, maybe they're not all amazing hits, but watch some other stuff.
Yeah.
And I will say that it's the least amount of things you said about, you can see this in Parasite, you can see this in Parasite. This does kind of seem like a bit of an odd man out.
You're so right, because it doesn't maybe have as much of that content, as much as that tie back that he's known for as a director. And again, that 39 comes from a fact that, realistically, are there worse movies than this that would be given a 39? Sure, but I think there was a certain lack of worth itness. There was a lack of electricity that makes me say, "Oh, you got to watch this," or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
that wasted time aspect is what I'm, trying to.
Yeah, you walked away and been like, "All right, I didn't need this."
Exactly, I didn't need this in the 5 movie stretch of the week.
All right, so that's Mother with a little bit of a disappointing 39. That was 2009. Jumping ahead to 2016 here, we got a pretty
newish.
Yeah, newish list here.
Yeah.
This is 10 Cloverfield Lane. This is Dan Trachtenberg. This was very well received. This is one of the
cult hit, I would say, almost.
Yeah, but I think it's better reaching. I think a lot of people understand that this is a good one.
Yeah.
Especially in the Cloverfield family, correct?
Yes, I have some notes with it. I mean, kind of nonsensical because, like, where is it now? But
sure.
yes, it is absolutely plainly in the Cloverfield universe, if you will.
Right. It is.
CCU.
Sure. But 10 Cloverfield Lane here, 2016. We have John Goodman.
Yep.
What do we have? How does it work in kind of this world?
Yeah, and I think my focus for the review is definitely going to be that this film works so much on a level that it's apart from the Cloverfield franchise.
Sure.
It is inescapable that it is, this being the second entry, it's kind of a bait and switch that it's part of that franchise, but it is absolutely, at a certain point, it is in your face that it is part of that franchise.
Right.
So after the positive reception of Prey, I wanted to give this a shot for the director, do some more research about him. This Cloverfield franchise is definitely a mess. The first film was a mild success, capitalizing on found footage type films of, I think that was actually 2009, original Cloverfield, if I'm correct. This film is a totally different beast, and I think that's why it got a lot of positive reception and novel still today. It's very original as a story. This was a huge hit for the franchise and probably gave it a second life, because, I don't know anyone that was really dying on the sword for Cloverfield,
I agree completely.
Yeah.
I also agree with you that this stands on its own as well as a film.
Sure.
Like, don't worry about, I presume you would say.
Yes, don't worry about Cloverfield or anything like that.
Right. If you want to watch them, fine, but you don't need, you don't need to watch it to watch this film.
Sure, yeah, you don't need to do the homework or anything like that. Yeah. And then most of all, the third film, which was a Netflix release and apparently a late tie-in to the franchise, they kind of like hijacked the movie, which there's actually some thoughts that this movie itself was hijacked for how much, the idea of Cloverfield as a franchise aren't really a part of it until a certain point in the film. But that last movie, The Cloverfield Paradox, was basically seemingly put the franchise to bed, basically. It's
Netflix.
Yeah. Netflix definitely put the nail in the coffin there. So I would say, as far as my praise of this film, it really boils down to performances, which I'm honestly delighted to, because I talk a lot on reviews about filmmaking, the craft of it, what goes into the production, and sometimes I feel like actors and performances get kind of pushed aside. Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Goodman are phenomenal here. Really just it's a tight little script, and they just get to pack such small little emotions and tendencies into their performance. It's really impressive for it. As far as the plot here, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is seemingly kidnapped by a radical doomsday prepper played by John Goodman. What starts as a simple hostage setup to the film rapidly changes to flip the table on the circumstances. The fear of trying to escape quickly becomes the fear to try to stay inside. And I think this almost small set, this almost TV premise type of playground that the plot is so brilliant. And I'll be honest, how this film incorporates some of the Cloverfield aspects, I feel it's like totally unnecessary, but it doesn't necessarily take away from the film either. If anything, going back to what you said, Tom, you don't have to do homework for this, and that's appreciated.
And honestly, if the whole Cloverfield Lane or the whole Cloverfield universe stays alive, if the idea is we get these completely independent stories that barely touch on actually Cloverfield stuff or whatever, that's fine. If we're getting good content, we just want to be like, have different pockets of story. That could be cool.
Yeah. I guess to that extent, Cloverfield Paradox does continue that. It's its own like little sci-fi story, and then
Yeah, it's poop though, right?
Yes. So from what I hear,
and
there was a lot of chatter that it was online that it was like, the death of the Cloverfield. That's kind of approximate nerd knowledge is how it landed on my radar. So,
but getting back to tight script, and also we're confined into an area. I think that's good because it's like a sharp knife.
Yeah.
Yes.
Such a well-crafted thriller. And I think a good thriller is about
no fat, right?
Yeah,
You
no
like,
fat.
especially you. You love to like, let's cut it where we can. Like,
Exactly.
let's
And this
only
film
good moments
really
here.
doesn't have fat. Again, my opinion is maybe the Cloverfield elements are the fat to it. But,
sure.
But as far as the setup of our two actors in the bunker, and with this setup that she's kind of kidnapped by this doomsday prepper, but there's maybe something to staying with this doomsday prepper. I loved it. So much of the bunker is used as elements and tiebacks. I don't think there's a single inch of this bunker that is not used throughout the film in some sort of strategic way or problem solving, or to obviously for the thriller element to bring up intensity to it.
Right.
And I think that's really it's a good hats off. This film is simple, it's straightforward, and a perfect example of that's not a bad thing whatsoever.
No,
for a
absolutely
film.
not.
I think both Winstead and Goodman's performance here are excellent. Almost this film isn't a must-watch as a whole, but these individual performances are absolutely must-watch. Goodman is unstable. He is showing his twisted lens. He sees all events and relationships through. I think there is a villainy crafted here that it's not through monologues or expositions, but it's in reactions. He'll suddenly call Winstead, "Oh, my sweet little princess," and like nothing will be done, but she notices it. We notice it as the audience, and what we're taking notice of is like, all right, he sees things in a very different way, and clearly not the real way either.
Right.
So, it's just such a man. Goodman's performance here is. I don't know. I wouldn't even call myself a huge fan of him as an actor. I respect him. He's been a lot of good stuff. But this is just like, wow, he really put time into understanding the script and understanding the dynamic. This feels like almost like an acting workshop in a way of how much they have subtleties towards each other.
Yeah, would you say that he made this character his own? He thought about it. He goes, and he brought it to life kind of on screen.
Absolutely.
He took it on,
And he can say, oh, what are you going to do? It's a doomsday prepper. You just make him crazy. No, I mean, in lesser hands, it would be delivered through clumsy blocks of text or blocks of dialogue.
Right.
In this, it's through their chemistry within the bunker. It's very interesting.
I'll say I just happened to watch this relatively recently.
Oh, yeah?
And I was impressed by his facial expressions. I think tell a lot as well.
Yeah.
Those really hint at this guy is, like you said, slightly unstable.
Sure, yeah.
Some of the way he smirks or when he does, or even his eyes and what he does with his mouth sometimes. It's just like, oh, this guy kind of looks like someone you don't really want to spend some time on the sidewalk talking to. Like, just keep on walking a little bit.
For sure. Absolutely. And furthermore, I mean, I think Winstead does a great job. I'm a big fan of her. Obviously, Scott Pilgrim has a soft spot in my heart. But I really do enjoy her as an actor, even going into Birds of Prey.
Was she one of the main
she's
gals?
she's one of the vigilante superheroes, and I just enjoy her a lot of stuff. Here, it is a textbook, for me at least, perfect horror protagonist. She is scared all the way through, but that does not take away from her competency as a character. She's smart, she's attentive where it needs to be, and again, that definitely plays into the game that the plot has to use every inch of the bunker being a limited space. But how do we create a thriller out of this limited space? And she leads it perfectly as a protagonist there. I would say, I can't talk too much about spoilers. Can't talk about anything about spoilers. It's not the game of the
rules.
show. Yeah, that's not the game of the show. This film definitely, 100%. I cannot say. You can't be completely oblivious of Cloverfield. You definitely don't need to do homework for the franchise, but you do kind of have to have a vague idea of what's going on and. The franchise.
I don't know. When I watched it, I don't know really anything about Cloverfield.
Really? Okay.
So when I watched it, I was just like, okay, yeah, all right, that's the Cloverfield. All right.
Okay, all right. but acceptable from your perspective, kind of just coming in not caring whatsoever about the
exactly.
franchise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's good to hear.
As far as the movie as a whole, or the Cloverfield bits?
The Cloverfield bits of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just aware. I literally, really knowing nothing, I was like, okay, this is all right. This is fine. Yeah, I get it. We're in the Cloverfield universe, and that's all you really need to know.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where I feel like it's tacked on in such a way that's like we have our normal story, and then suddenly the switch is turned on, and now we're in a Cloverfield movie all of a sudden. It felt just very tacked on. I mean, that really was what my feelings of it are. So I can't say I hated it because I enjoyed the scenario of the main plot so much. But yeah, I knew the praise of this film focused on how drastic of a turn it takes, but I come away from this rating. I walk away with this film saying it is memorable, saying it is worth your time for the core of that plot, the core of what is going on in the bunker and between our two actors, and really a positive rating for this. We're going to go ahead and give 10 Cloverfield Lane a 72.
722, yeah, definitely good, great score.
Beats out Prey, and I'm excited to see what else this director can do because, I think he's got a sharp eye and definitely a sense for unique type of premises to films. Even if he's kind of coming in halfway into franchise. Basically, this is the same.
If he does a good, if this is his reputation, fine.
The franchise saver,
franchise saver, absolutely. Because that way, if something looks like it's shit, and then it's like, well, hey, Dan's coming back for another one. Well, we gotta go see this one.
Oh, you gotta see Dan.
Any Lost vibes like Hatch? Like Jack and Locke? No, okay, that's a no. Because you just thought about it now.
Oh, yeah. I definitely didn't. That definitely didn't occur to me, but that's a soft spot too. So.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't JJ the first Cloverfield?
Oh, is it?
I think
again, I don't know nothing about it.
Yeah, I think it's. It's off the radar.
It is his production company, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's all connected. So,
just to remind people, I don't know, just for people who are new to the podcast or came in recently, I heard one comment about a score the other day. And I think it's important to also kind of go down, like 72 means that this is a pretty good movie. A
good movie, well worth your time.
Yeah, we're not. This is not no 72 on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. It totally is much more meaningful than that. Where 60s are good movie, 70s are very good movie, 80s are
great, if not make time to watch it.
Yeah, because and then like we say, 85 and above
is a must.
Is a must watch for most audience, or basically all audiences, movies to see before you die. So 72 is right in there, and this is a very good movie, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're gonna move on here, and this is. I'll tell you what, we're gonna throw this.
We're gonna throw in the new.
I don't know. What do you want to do?
It's your call. I watched it streaming, so.
But it came out within 30 days, right?
We're in the 30 days. This is a new rule we're implementing. If it's within 30 days, it's a new release. So, listen, I can benefit off of that. I can.
Well, this is perfect because honestly, the music's not playing right now anyway. So I'll tell you what, we're going to throw this in the old bin.
Okay,
and we'll try to fix that. So we'll just throw it off to this. Okay, so we're in 2022. I'm now taking this off the new release. The new releases.
It's done.
Because this came out in what, July?
Yeah, late July.
Okay, so this is Resurrection. This was I don't know, maybe you can find it in some theaters, but I'm scrapping it from the new releases.
He's cutting it from the new.
But yeah, it came out in late July. This is starring Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. It's directed by Andrew Siemens. Resurrection. What do we have with this film? Yeah,
so this is a very, very psychological horror. I mean, heavy psychological emphasis around it. Slipped through the cracks with End of July with a few. Vengeance as well was another one with, forgetting his name, but the guy from The Office. Yeah, I just wanted to return to these, and I may return to some of those other ones just because they're smaller indie films, and I didn't get around to it for the juggling act of these main releases, but that doesn't mean it's not worth your time, and Resurrection I had a lot of curiosity with. This is, again, I can't stress enough, heavy psychological thriller horror. It is around sadism, kind of as a theme.
Okay.
And much like what we covered with the film Men, it is about emotional abuse, and that is the conduit for horror. A bit hard to swallow, and if anything, I'll compare to Men a few times. There are some surrealist elements in this film around the horror specifically that is definitely going to be challenging for a lot of our audiences to keep up with. And I gotta say, unlike a Crimes of the Future, unlike a Mad God, this is hurting it a little bit, because I think those surrealist elements are kind of muddying the theming of this film. It's muddying the execution of the film a little bit. We covered a good amount of Rebecca Hall already on the podcast. Of course, the meh Godzilla vs. Kong and the good Silent House. The good Night House. Silent House is another film. Too many houses. She plays a single mother. Once again, another mother. A maternal episode who seems to be kind of functioning in a crisis. She's functioning in crisis mode. It's very weird.
Okay.
We kind of already...
A little manic?
Yeah, we enter with her being disconnected and then suddenly, on 11, and specifically around her daughter and some very select areas of her life. But then she kind of, basically shuts off after that. She's certainly successful in her life, but she is relentlessly haunted by past trauma that is destroying, and I mean destroying, her sanity in present day, and destroying, maybe to the point of the film, her relationship with her daughter as well. The trauma is centralized around actor Tim Roth, who's kind of been back on a rise. He's back in the MCU with the god-awful CGI of She-Hulk, and he's kind of getting back into acting a little bit. I have a soft spot for Tim Roth a little bit. I don't know why. Maybe he's my boy.
maybe Tim Roth's your guy. He's Tarantino's boy.
True.
He's in a lot of Tarantino projects.
Exactly. So
was this film giving you vibes of that other? We covered that other kind of thriller horror suspense movie with that woman in, like, was it like Amsterdam or something like that, and she just is like going crazy.
Watcher
in like in a foreign country.
That's Watcher.
Okay.
Watcher was much more bare bones.
Okay, there's a little bit more complex, but it is someone losing their sanity a little bit, correct?
Yeah, she's losing her sanity. It's different, though.
Okay, gotcha.
I would say Men's the closer comparison to it, because again, the horror is being crafted around emotional abuse, basically, as the theming there, and a lot of successful horror, you're going to have it tied back to, almost in like a sci-fi way. It means something beyond, there's something deeper that it relates to as a theme, and that's definitely the focus here. And sadism, oddly enough. But hey, it's very psychological. Back to Tim Roth, though. His presence drives her up a wall, and this is an odd one for him, because his menace on screen is not immediately relevant. It's not present to us as the audience. He is very calm in his words. He's very consoling, but the manipulation is right there beneath the surface, and I really did enjoy his performance. Actually, both of their performances here were really good. With both of them sharing the screen time, I would say this film is at its best. You can see the subtle strings being pulled on both sides, and it's just really good. Rebecca will go into the scene very angry, very hot. She's spitting venom at him, and you see his menace as a villain not necessarily come back and force her into a corner. It's to diffuse her and unravel her, and then kind of make something out of it, and almost again that's where this manipulation kind of comes into play, and it's wild. Their relationship you see, and it's like, would anyone do this? But the film, I think, has a lot of success in selling that he's got her wrapped around his finger, in more ways that are
emotionally controlled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's the good fundamentals there, where it may lose some audiences where that relationship is more surreal, where the horror is added to that and trying to make more of a surreal type of, lack of reality, lack of, more blown out elements to it. Right. Honestly, most of all, the emotional performance here is equally impressive and intense. There really is some incredible unease on the film, or that the film kind of conjures up, kind of musters up in making us question every move Rebecca has as a mother. It's like, it's painting our main character as an unreliable narrative source, and for how much she falls into this manipulation. It really is uneasy to watch for that reason, and I think that there's a lot of success in that. I think there's a lot of credit that goes towards Hall's emotional performances of just how all over the range she is. I mean, she is all over the spectrum as far as anger, sadness, kind of dead inside, melancholy.
She strikes me as someone that could be very good at those emotional beats.
Yeah.
She strikes me as someone who can really deliver it and make her a believable character.
Absolutely. And maybe that comes into the film's kind of arc of her kind of mental degradation. She's being beaten down with this. But yeah, I would say the factors that hurt this experience are very strictly in spoilers. And like I said, there are very surreal, unusual moments to the horror in the film. The best thing I can say is that it is from the perspective of Rebecca Hall going through this crisis, as a character. I'll end with saying, this is not a movie we get a lot of answers with. Again, not to overcompare.
Like exactly. Just like Men.
Exactly. Surrealism in Men, especially on kind of a further reflection, one more rewatch under my belt, I can maybe theory craft a little bit. That's not the point of these reviews, but I think very similarly, what really puts these films almost identically in the same spot for me is that it's taking these relationship horrors, making them actual horror, and I think what doesn't stick for me is that jump to actual horror, because the jump is to make things as out there and shocking as possible. And I don't want to use surreal again, but surrealist, when it comes to it.
Yeah, was it almost the fact of you could have had pick a lane basically?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to talk about it if I go any deeper.
That's
yeah,
fine. But was it almost like you
it's
had
just out there. It's just very out there.
So at some points, it's like you're watching an emotional thriller or emotional drama, and then other times it's just like, okay, now we're just watching a horror.
Sure, exactly, and I think maybe the
balance great.
Yeah, and I'll use this as a comparison. You look at The Shining and the themes of the emotional abuse in The Shining within Jack Nicholson's family. That is well blended with the actual horror that's always present, where with Men and definitely with Resurrection, the horror, when it comes out, I can definitely see where they're trying to tie with it, but it's just so out there. I think for a more passive audience, someone that may be not super engaged with this film, they're going to see this and they're just going to turn it off. They're going to say, what the hell is this?
Okay, gotcha.
And Men and Resurrection definitely have that kind of, there's lack of, yeah. There's a lack of connective tissue between the two. So, but I would say certainly cut from the same cloth, and so much of the film is not literal, and that's where, again, with my Men review, I was positive on it. I'm fairly positive on this as well. And if anything, I come with the exact same feeling that they tackle similar type of themes. I think I slightly like this one better, but both have kind of different stumbles towards the end that really landed in the same spot for me as far as a rating. We're going to go ahead and give Resurrection a 69.
Okay, 69. It's tough when you have these films that you can't really talk about, but that's interesting because Men, you came pretty positive with.
Yeah.
Dissatisfied with the ending, correct? You were wanting just a little bit more.
Bingo.
And you're not someone who needs a Hollywood bow on things. That's definitely not you, but it was still like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of deal. It's frustration.
Yeah.
Which isn't good. You don't want to leave it.
Exactly.
You're frustrated for that reason.
And I think maybe this ending wasn't frustrated, but then was also lacking some of the follow through that Men had. It really did.
Sure.
And especially both having the same theme, I kind of almost couldn't escape. Was this were they made at the same time? It's weird. Sometimes you get that in film and movies that similar type of stories will come about. I don't know if it's like a script getting tossed around and then people make their own script out of maybe taking a peek at another script, or I don't know. So
it's interesting how similar it was, though.
Yeah, and within the same year. So I don't know. It's apparently
Men did come out this year.
Emotional abuse horror is all the rage. So.
Well, okay, that's Resurrection was the 69, which again, good movie still.
Yes, exactly.
There's still definitely enjoyable elements that you had to give it that score.
Mm-hmm. And even though we put a lot of credit into the 10 spots of 50, 60, 70, in reality, I think it's good to say, I mean, it's only, a couple points away from something that I was almost nearly completely raving about, like 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, very good film. Okay, very cool. All right, so that's 69 for Resurrection. Now, let's step into the...
There we go.
Yeah.
The lights are on.
We're going to go into producer segment here, folks, and just thank those of you who helped produce, and we do have a producer this week. This is Sean Dunleavy this week, Vin.
Shawnee boy.
Sean came in with $10 here, which is awesome, and he wrote a note along with it. So let's read that. He said, "This is one of the best movie podcasts I've listened to."
Oh, wow.
Very cool. This is there is no dragging on about one specific movie, and the boys always stay on topic. Which we try to. We veer sometimes.
We definitely veer.
But we definitely try not to drag, that's for sure. I really enjoy the strategy and criteria that goes behind the ratings and reviews. I find them to be truly fair, honest, and consistent.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's
He's
what we try to do.
us.
He is plugging. The themed episodes are also very entertaining, especially the ones like the Stephen King special.
Oh.
Which was good. I like that we did that.
Yeah.
I hope people enjoyed
poopy
that.
movies, some of them. But
Yeah, but it was good. That was fun.
Yeah.
Next year, instead of Fred Astaire, I'd love to request a possible Brendan Fraser February.
Oh, Fraser February. For the return of Fraser.
That's
He's on
really
the
funny.
rise.
And it makes sense that February is the shortest month, too, because there's just not that much there.
Yeah.
I love it. The Brendan Fraser February would be hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just a mummy special, basically.
Exactly.
Sean goes on here. He goes, "I know Vin enjoys his superhero/sci-fi movies. I do as well. We seem to have the same preferences. However, you said in an episode that X-Men First Class is the best X-Men movie." Ooh. Say what? Any from the original three are far better. There needs to be a rewatch there.
Oh, that's a big
This podcast is true. And that's
like
I
7
do remember you saying that, too.
I think out of the
You liked
mainline
First Class a lot.
I do. I think X-Men First Class is a fun movie.
Okay.
But I think Logan realistically gets the crown. Even though it's not titled X-Men.
Yes.
I think
I think absolutely it
Yeah,
does. Not that it doesn't. It's not the most X-Men-y feel.
Sure.
But I do remember you always liked X-Men First Class.
do, yeah.
Well, maybe we'll watch it then in the future. This podcast is truly different and stands out compared to those other movie podcasts. Yeah, you're damn right it does. Even though I'm only a listener, I feel like I've known them for years based on how well they do at keeping a review podcast as casual conversation. Although not all movies are perfect, I can't get a 100%. I will have to rate this podcast the same way. We're going to go ahead and give the Daily Ratings podcast a 99.9%.
That's amazing. We're gonna go ahead. Thank you so much.
Which,
Sean.
that's too high. That's too high, by the way. It's impossible. We're not that good. We're not.
Yeah.
One only thing I would correct in his thing here.
You taking the knives out?
No. He goes, even though I'm only a listener, and he's not only a listener. He's a producer. He's helping us produce the Daily Ratings.
Absolutely.
He is an executive producer at episode 47. We can't thank him enough. And again, and it's $10. Last week we had Glenn donate $10.
Sure.
And that's all it. A little bit means so much to us.
It really
for all
does.
of you who are out there.
It really
If
does.
you're wondering what this is, again, it's the Daily Ratings. We're the value for value model. We want to stay away from corporate advertising, so we're completely producer supported. You go to thedailyratings.com and you go to the donations tab, and there basically through any amount of value you're getting from what we're presenting here through the podcast and through the website, it's valuable to you. And if so, put a $sign to it and send your way. Sean wanted to give $10. That was the value he's been getting from us.
Sure.
And that's fantastic.
Yeah. Maybe it saved you a movie ticket or something.
Right. Well, it saved you a movie ticket, and it's just, everyone who goes to Rotten Tomatoes, you're getting ads thrown at you and cookies and all that. We're not dealing with that. And if you do find yourself listening or going to the site and checking out, what did the Daily Ratings give this? Let's look at this here. what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's fun talking about film. I know there's some other people that are getting into it more and getting excited about film.
Absolutely.
And that's awesome to hear. And if you can't give any money, hey, get us in the conversation. That's where we want to be. We're looking to grow. We're looking to expand. And we thank you all so much. So, Sean, we thank you. Great note also, by the way. We appreciate
stellar
that.
Note.
Yeah. And so anyway, if you donate, by the way, if you are a producer, you write in a note and we'll read it on air. If you want to be anonymous, there's an anonymous box. You just check that off. Don't worry about that. Okay. All right. So with that, Vin, we're going to keep things going here. This is our true new release, ones that you can actually see in theaters, except for this film.
Because it's
an Amazon original. But this is just called Samaritan. This is Sylvester Stallone. And just give us a brief insight into what this film is. Why does it exist, and how does it perform?
It's Fugazi superhero. Let me get
totally
something
made up.
Yeah, it's well, not. It is based off of a graphic novel from 2014, I believe, of the same name. Let me get something off my chest, folks. I am nauseous of superhero content.
Yep.
I take plenty of joy in seeing nerd culture rise up to be the dominant force in pop culture. But I simply do not care.
I don't think most people care.
Yeah, there's a burnout going on,
I haven't heard anyone be excited. Who's excited about the movie Samaritan?
No.
Who knew that there was a movie called Samaritan?
This is right, exactly. We're putting the spotlight on.
Yeah.
We're the only ones. But yeah, this is definitely in kind of the shovelware of Amazon. You know what I mean? They're putting it out, and I like some of Amazon's releases. I really do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Amazon is so weird with their stuff. Even though the TV
super hit and miss.
I think they do a terrible job at promoting what they have going on. I mean, a really bad job at what's going on.
Yeah.
I was flipping through the other day and just like, we're in season 2 of that one. I don't even forget what it's called, but it's got Christopher Walken in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
It's season, right, it's season 2 of it. And it's just like, what are you doing not promoting? This might be one of the last things we get from Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
Promote it.
Yeah,
like no one even knows what's going on. Anyway.
But just to, folks, drive home what I'm coming at with superhero content, I mean, this is further compounded with comic books content that introduces its own, self-contained continuity. If I lose interest with the real deal DC Marvel content, fake heroes have zero of my attention. I would say, regardless if it's a real comic book behind it or not, I hate to say it, but this even affects my excitement to consume alternative superhero content. I'm talking about The Boys. I'm talking about Invincible. I'm talking about even a little bit of Watchmen, I find it very hard for me to bring attention or get my attention going to its own world of superheroes, and Samaritan is absolutely that. Samaritan tells the story of a superhero in exile that is called to action and returns to fighting crime. It's very, very straightforward. It honestly feels like an earlier 2000s movie for how origin it is and how much it plays by the books. We see this through the eyes of a kid that is obsessed with the Samaritan, and he tries his hardest to basically just get him back in the game. I'm going to boil this down, folks, to a few reasons why you should not watch this movie, and there are plenty. Number one is Stallone is just a bad actor in this. It's such a shame because none of the charisma is channeled that we saw earlier with the Suicide Squad and his role as King Shark. He basically was doing
I don't even remember him being in Suicide Squad.
Well, he's CGI. He's the big shark dude.
I don't even think I knew that. He was the shark?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The thing is, what's great about it is he's doing almost like a bad impression of himself. He's doing an impression of people doing a bad impression of Stallone.
That's funny.
It is. And he was really one of the best parts of that film. All of that charisma is gone in this film. It doesn't help that the Samaritan has kind of low-tier Superman powers, so scenes will be he's getting peppered with bullets or something, and it just looks so visually boring because clearly the CGI is being added post-production, and I have no idea what the directing of Stallone was, but it was just like walk forward and look badass. I mean, there's just nothing done to the things thrown at him. Yeah. And it's not in a good Superman way where it's like, wow, he really can stop a train or something like that, or stop a speeding bullet, or I don't know what the old Superman quotes are. I'll have to watch the Christopher Reeves movies, but
it's stupid.
Yes, it comes off distinctly cheap and distinctly lacks engagement from Stallone in his own, highlighted superhero,
Sure.
Speaking of cheap is cheap bad action. There are just so many cuts from hits. There is also just more wannabe Marvel kung fu, which is already bad as something to emulate.
But it just doesn't work, and it comes off bad and cheesy.
Yeah.
It doesn't come off engaging at all.
Yeah, this also the action also has a little bit of an identity crisis because it is. Bringing up Logan, we talked about some of the more brutal aspects being added to the superhero films. Logan is a perfect example of that, being rated R. This has
you have been. This is your train, man. Yeah. You are trying to steer this train, and no one else is on it.
Right? No.
I mean, I agree completely. I think the people agree.
Yes.
I don't know why they're not making a movie. They're so afraid to lose at the box office.
Yeah.
But man,
and this is streaming, so it's like, I don't know, roll the dice on a super bloody version.
Look
of
at the
this.
boy. That's what I mean.
And Amazon as well. I think that's a great.
But you made a great point in the beginning where it's just like you put this shit out there, and it makes me less interested in the good stuff now because we're we're flooded. It is oversaturated with this stuff.
Total burnout.
What the hell is his name with the nose? Good friends. He's paired with Vince Vaughn. Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson is in a new
superhero?
Kind of superhero-ish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Get him,
and his character looks like he's trying to be like an Iron Man knockoff or something like that. It's just what is going on with all this.
Yeah, this alternative content, I mean, believe me, you have to jump through hoops to keep up with DC and Marvel. Why the hell should I care about anything else? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, I mean, that's a side point. What I'm keying into with the action is that the film tries to have safe cutaway Marvel kung fu, but then also has to try to be this gritty Logan type of real hits, and it just doesn't have that in the edit. I could see where maybe the choreography on set is trying to make more of an intense action, but that PG-13 rating is definitely haunting this and definitely neutering it. And I think the edit itself specifically neuters it. I don't think there's a single hit that we see land in this entire film. It is always a cutaway, and I mean, that's one of those things where I'll say, maybe that doesn't affect the average watching experience for people.
If it's that bad, it would.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think most people would get.
Yeah.
If it's that bad.
And I think these are the fundamentals that play into maybe someone just watching a movie for the sake of watching a movie and walking away and saying, meh. I think those mehs are compounding eventually. And we got to look to things like editing and fight choreography for that, especially when superheroes are concerned.
Yeah. It's funny because they had some good film editors on it.
Yeah.
I mean, the one guy did John Wick 3, Birds of Prey. The other guy did like Beasts of No Nations, Margin Call, which is critically acclaimed, but I'm not the biggest fan of it.
We'll cover a financial flick special.
But what's weird is maybe it's just the director, too, overseeing the entire thing.
I think so. And who knows as far as kind of maybe even Amazon's meddling into wanting more of a PG-13 content. I don't know. Either way, the execution is definitely flubbed. Third and finally, there is just really, really dumb cookie cutter writing with just manipulating fake emotions. There's fake morals here. There's a huge attempt and a failure to make our villains kind of some sort of victims of the system or society.
Okay.
And it just lands so flat on its face. I cannot tell you. I mean, they're like trying to cast as just like, yeah, we've been downtrodden all this time and now we're rising up. And then like they'll just like shoot like random civilians, and it's just like, this doesn't make sense. Like not even your own manifesto it makes sense in, I think a part of why we get so much focus on the morals is that we have this like kid perspective that we're seeing this through, and we kind of get almost a Bronx Tale style taste of different upbringings on both sides of the coin. But the morals are just being positioned so laughably thin. It's almost insulting. It's almost like I was like, how do you make this? How do you really make this? It is a do not watch. Plain and simple. I mean, many folks at home, Tom, it may be cathartic to hear me really tear into this thing, but I'm not going to spend much more time with it.
I don't think there's any need.
Yeah, I think don't waste your time, and realistically, I don't think it was on even anyone's radar to waste the time with.
I don't think it's on anybody's list.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and give Samaritan a 25.
Yes.
You love the low ratings.
And for folks at home, 20. If you're new to this podcast,
Yeah.
25 is a bad score.
Yeah.
I love it. And I don't think it was on anybody's list. I don't know who was asking for this film. I don't know who was excited to see this film now that it's out.
We cut Resurrection from the new releases, but Samaritan got the spot.
It's just like so dumb. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's just bad. It's just bad all the way. It's just and you're releasing it like days before the Lord of the Rings release.
Oh, true.
It's just dumb. It's just nothing about it makes sense.
I know.
I hate the way Amazon releases their stuff. The
as
way
far
they
as the marketing
promote
goes.
and don't promote.
Yeah.
The marketing is wrong, and it's just I think they're just bad at putting teams together and making stuff. The boys, some stuff is good,
Right? There's exceptions to the rule.
but when you
for
look at the
sure.
percentage, it's just like what are we doing here, fellas?
I agree. My go-to is always Manchester by the Sea. You know, I mean, I believe Oscar-winning, but definitely Oscar.
Oh no, it is
film.
absolutely.
But it's
here's the
also
thing,
like
I don't think,
one
but
diamond in the rough.
I don't think that was straight Amazon either.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was like things were in motion and Amazon picked it up for some stuff.
Yeah.
And for distribution as well. Something like that.
It's certainly what Apple does. You know, they get something and they, basically, put the licensing on it.
Yeah, they're trying to do heavy hitters. They got the
Yeah.
Hanks deal. Martin Scorsese's next film is
really?
an Apple thing. Yeah.
Oh, back to the depths. I gotta get that Apple ID out. Don't know where the password is. Can't reset the password unless I got an iPhone.
It's so bad. Yeah. Okay, all right. So moving on to our last film here, folks. This is, again, new release. It's in theater. This was in actual theaters.
Yeah.
This is 3,000 Years of Longing. Kind of seems like a cool film.
Yeah.
Set it up for us, and how was it?
So, yeah, this is George Miller's return after the immensely successful Mad Max Fury Road.
Absolutely.
And I don't throw around masterpiece, but Mad Max Fury Road was not only a return to force for his own franchise, but also the definitive Mad Max experience. So, really.
So good.
Yeah.
And to have a movie like that made so recently, it's just very not in character with what we've been getting.
Yeah,
it was such
sure.
a treat. It was
Absolutely.
such a treat.
Yeah. And George Miller is also a director that he's like Ridley Scott. I mean, he's getting up there. Or maybe Cronenberg as well. You know, I mean, these are,
sure.
They're getting up there. So you don't really realistically know how many more films they're going to be, directing, producing. So I really wanted to give this one a spotlight. And in addition to lackluster new releases like Samaritan. However, lovers of Mad Max Fury Road, this may not be a hit for that group because it is very romantic, believe it or not, and it just may not hit for general audience as well because it's pretty unconventional. Our two main stars are Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. Tilda Swinton plays an academic with a overactive imagination. It's kind of introduced to us as traveling to Istanbul for a conference among peers. She stumbles into a mythical jinn, a genie, with 3 wishes and everything, and phenomenal cosmic powers, to quote Robin Williams. But Idris Elba is that jinn. He's that genie.
Really?
Yeah.
So he's like the Shaq in... what was that movie? Not Shazam. What the hell was that movie?
Is it Shazam?
Wait, no, because Shazam is a show now, isn't it? On Amazon?
No, Shazam is the DC movie.
Okay. Okay.
Boy, this was more superhero than I thought. This episode.
What the hell was that Shaq movie in the late 90s?
Yeah, I think it might have been called Shazam as well, in which case we're highlighting a new lawsuit for DC by Warner Brothers. But yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Idris Elba plays a black genie.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So this is
Exactly.
Will Smith in the newest Aladdin, and this is also Shaq in Shazam.
He does such a better job. He does such a better job than Smith. But yeah.
Sorry, not to derail it.
Right now. These three wishes, I mean, it is beyond the wildest dreams. Tilda's character is a skeptic, though, and wisely wants nothing to do with the genie's tricks. Most of the story is told in flashbacks of the genie's life for previous owners of his bottle, and I would say one of the more interesting things is that it's almost it's a very meta script in the sense that Tilda Swinton's character is talking to this genie, knowing the entire history of every genie story being a cautionary tale of, the monkey's paw. You don't wish for what you really want, or you're going to get, it's going to turn out to be not what you actually desire.
Okay, all right.
So there's a really interesting premise to the characters here, but unfortunately, we get lost in these backstories with the genie. There are 3 mini stories before we get into the final act of the film, which is what Swinton does with the genie's wishes. The pacing is just critically hurt with these flashbacks to the genie's life. I would say these smaller stories, I don't want to call boring, because I feel like that's really just a huge insult to the immense style this film has. I mean, this film
sounds
oozes.
Bonkers.
Yeah, well,
it's
a little boring. It's bonkers, but it's a little boring.
Oh,
yeah,
wow,
yeah.
okay.
And I really don't try to use that word, because one, subjective, very subjective, boring, but also two, I think that really spits in the face of the love of the design that Miller is putting in, and Miller's team is putting into this. The same love that went into all those wonderful visuals in Mad Max Fury Road, the car design, the costumes, all of that is here.
It's a good looking film.
It is a very good looking film, but the execution is it's a little boring and it's a little unfocused. Most of all, I think the most critical I will get with this is that we have such a unique premise that Swinton's character again knows all of what a genie is and is totally skeptical. She doesn't even want the wishes, She knows it's going to end bad. By the time that we get to her actually wanting to do something with the wishes, it kind of throws that out. It doesn't tie back to that at all, and instead just kind of fizzles for the rest of the film. It's very odd.
It's kind of okay.
Oh, go ahead.
The movie sounds weird.
Yeah,
like what you're describing, I could barely put together, because at some point these flashbacks that they have nothing to do with Swinton and have everything to do with past other people's wishes from the genie.
Yeah. We jump into 3 separate stories.
I mean, is that annoying, or is that that's the only fun part we actually have in the film?
Well, the first story is definitely the best, and we have a lot of fun because it's told like history before history type of stuff. When this djinn first came about, and there's cool magic and there's excellent design, but there's just such a stop start. There's just a jerkiness to the film. And Swinton's, interest in hearing these stories is that she doesn't want these wishes, so the genie is trying to convince her, kind of telling a sob story, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of just like, this is where, I've never been able to fulfill this, basically, for the 3 stories. So, but again, the structure there is too jerky. It's too stop-start, too abrupt, I guess would be
I think that would
to it.
Okay, I can see that. And we're only dealing with an hour and 48 here.
Exactly. And to call an hour 48 more, I mean, what do
Especially
chop
the premise.
30 minutes. Yeah, I know.
No,
I know. I'm real torn on this because I believe me, I was going in. I really wanted to like it, but it's just a little bit of an oddball. Like I said, for the fact that Swinton's character actually recognizes the cautionary aspect of all genie stories, and then that's not really tied back to for the conclusion of this film, and there's no cautionary aspects to her and what she does. I had just said there was just a real big disconnect, and I feel that the film just kind of fizzled at one point, and it really upsets me because I do not think this film is uninspired. I feel like this film is, in ways, a visual feast in a lot of sections of the film. Man, it's got all the striking visuals of Miller's production in Fury Road, but with I don't know. No tie back, no real substance to it then. Let's talk about some of the CGI, because I think visually, if there's going to be a reason you watch this, it is for the visuals to it.
Yeah, and we know that George Miller can crush it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he crushes it here. Most of all, that, again, like the first story the genie tells, there's such a, wow, we're being transported into a new type of fantasy. It kind of tells a before written history type of way of going about it. And there are just such mystical elements that really take you by surprise. I think in these individual stories, there is wonderment to that mystical elements. Probably one of the most jarring things for me is that when Swinton and other characters are experiencing the magic of Idris Elba, there's no reaction. There's like, it's almost like they had no idea what was going to be happening CGI-wise. They were given no advanced warning of what they had to be reacting to.
So as you're watching, something just seems off a little bit.
Yeah, a perfect example is very early on the film when the djinn is released and it's in Swinton's hotel room. He's huge. He consumes the entire room, and there's no even like startle. There's no even like shock from Swinton.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah,
that's
bad.
bad.
And
the continuity's off.
Yeah. I don't blame it on the performance, because this is a very romantic, if anything, kind of a very intimate, emotional movie. And the performances on both sides, Swinton and Elba, are there. It's just that, like, in these moments, there's no recognition of what's on screen. And I can't tell you how much that sucks as an audience to be wondered by it and then not have that reflected in the character.
It throws you off completely. It throws the whole film off.
Exactly.
You're sitting there wondering, like you said, you have this
reaction.
Like, you think this person's going to have a reaction, and they don't. It's just like, oh, all right.
Okay, I guess it's not that big of a deal. You know? I guess you're dealing with genies all the time. So. Yeah. I really don't want to tear into this movie too much. I do have some...
I'm baffled by it.
I know.
It sounds like it could have been like one of the coolest movies. It sounds like you could have made it as crazy as like Everything Everywhere.
Sure, absolutely.
And like gone, not because that's dealing with dimensions or whatever. You could have dealt with crazy stuff. Though.
Absolutely.
I think an adult Aladdin, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It is really
just make Aladdin. It nuts, make it crazy, especially if you have George Miller. I mean,
yeah, and that's why I was so excited for this characterization of someone that knows what a genie is about, and an intelligent person, no less. She's an academic. Right. I was really excited by the film's premise to be like, oh wow, how is she going to use these three wishes? And like, how does she beat the genie? And it's just like, okay. So I think I'm very torn with this. I could definitely dig in a lot more, but I'm honestly, I want to tone back some of my notes, because I think this film does translate into a borderline positive rating for me. If anything, I've reflected a lot on a film like Nope. I feel bad in a way to give that the rating I gave it for such a, this is clearly vision. This is not cookie cutter. This is not, I
think it's great to have such a weird, unique story.
Yeah.
In theaters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it is rare, kind of, to have something like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's not really an imitator of this.
But you shouldn't feel bad. I mean, if you got it's not that you're knocking it just to do it. If it's not hitting, it's not hitting.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes back to, and that's where I really do get kind of reinforced in my ratings, and that is it worth your time?
Right.
I think
the basis of all this.
Yeah, and that's maybe been a big theme for the episode, for the films that we've covered here. I'm torn in a lot of ways. I mean, I can appreciate all I want about the amazing visuals, but it's lacking presence and impact on the screen. There is a very unique setup, and I appreciate the unique setup to the script of these, classic three wishes, monkey paw kind of thing, but fails to do much with it in the end result. I think it's unique enough to crack above a generic rating, but man, was this a little bit of a disappointment. Certainly, if you want to give George Miller some love, while he's still making movies, go see it in the theaters. Maybe donate in, let us know, write in. I'm curious to what other people think of this film, but we're going to go ahead and give 3,000 Years of Longing a 60 on the dot.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's not a bad film.
It's
I was
not.
expecting, I mean, I thought maybe you were going to give it worse.
No.
It just sounds more like you were just disappointed that because it could have been so much better.
Exactly. Believe me, this is I very much keep this in check. This is not expectations of what I wanted the film to be.
Right.
This is what the film sets up for itself and then lacks to reap and get as its own yield, basically.
Man.
So, but yeah, like I said, I mean, much like my notes with Mother, these are notable directors, and I think there is a worthiness to supporting directors and supporting something much more unique than your yearly Marvel.
I agree completely.
Yeah,
and a 60 is a good score still. Mm-hmm. Again, 60 is good for us.
Absolutely,
it's a good movie still.
Absolutely,
just a little odd. I mean, it's an
oddball for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Idris Elba not killing it in the box office with his 2 movies back to back.
I'm surprised. Maybe this
is doing really bad. This was opening weekend, correct?
Yes. Yep.
It's like 7th.
Really?
Top Gun 4th. Top Gun is 4th. Almost tying Beast, by the way.
I will sleep a full night's rest when I don't have to recognize Top Gun's. Top Gun's dominance.
It was third. It was third yesterday.
People are calling it masterpieces.
Beating out Dragon
now.
Ball and Beast. Yeah. Beating out Dragon Ball and Beast
wild.
yesterday.
That is wild.
I know. Anyway, 3,000 Years of Longing. It's not going to be in theaters long, so if you want to watch it, go see it soon. I would say, with the 60% on that though. Quite a weird, kind of unsettled week we have.
Like I said in the beginning, I mentioned, kind of a lot of disappointment, but I was excited to talk about a lot of these because I think again,
I like the array. I do.
Yeah. I'm stabbing in a lot of weird directions, as far as the picks for themselves, as far as these movies. So sometimes you're going to stumble into some bad movies, doing that.
Real quick, would you put Tilda Swinton in top 10 female of actresses?
Certainly in her ability to transform as a character.
Right.
I think she may be the most dynamic for it. I don't know. Top 10, maybe. Maybe.
I think she's really. Every time I see her, she's really good. I can't really name too much of the stuff that she's in. I was talking with my brother the one time, and he was like, "Oh, favorite actress, Tilda Swinton."
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And it took me back, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, all right, respect."
Yeah. I think that's a respectable choice.
Okay, Vince. So looking at these array of films here, anything else you want to comment on, or are we just going to go ahead and roll credits here on this one?
No. I think I'm good to go.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, Vin, we thank you for watching all those movies, and we'll see you next week. Folks at home, we're going to run it down here one more time. We have Mother with a 39%, 10 Cloverfield Lane with a 72%, Resurrection with a 69%, Samaritan with a 25%, and 3,000 Years of Longing with a 60%. Folks, we thank you so much for listening and producing, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating. Or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.